Okay, so my name is Vito LaBella, and I am a first responder. And I'm here today because, as Gordon said, this place is closing tomorrow. And I'm going to tell you my story. They have videos here. I did a moth story 5-6 years ago, but I never actually recorded my presentation. So I wanted to make sure that I came here. So I'm going to tell you the story that I usually tell, and then we're going to go a little bit further than that. Please indulge me. So again, my name is Vito LaBella, and I did not see myself as a first responder because there was a show several years back about Tuskegee Airmen on Broadway. And follow me here. After the show, there was a presentation kind of like this, where you get to meet the Tuskegee Airmen, the ones that were still there. And we went down and we heard them talk, and they had these great stories, but all of them were kind of like the mechanic at the airbase, or the flight trainer at the airbase. And none of them were actually the Tuskegee Airmen that were flying like in the movies that we see. And I felt that way because on 9/11, it was my 10th anniversary. I was married September 7th, 1991 to my beautiful wife, Kim. And we were in Cape Cod, Mass. On vacation on September 11th, 2001. So we're watching the Today Show. We went out, we walked on the beach, we collected shells, we brought back muffins. Cape Cod is known for muffins. We had great muffins. We're sitting down watching Matt Lauer, and they cut to Lower Manhattan. And they said, a plane struck a tower. Now, the truth is, because I'm a police lieutenant and work in Manhattan, and I think most people are like, oh God, thank God I'm on vacation, right? That's the first thing. Oh, I don't have to deal with that headache. Because we really didn't know how serious it was. But as we watched, it got more and more serious. And by the time the first tower collapsed, I was in the bathroom shaving and getting ready and packing up the car. Well, we didn't pack up the car. We left everything, including our 2 dogs with my mother and father-in-law. And Kim and I shot down to New York City. And when we come down to New York City on 95, if you know 95, the trip to Cape Cod on a great day with 0 traffic in the middle of the night takes about 4.5 hours. On a bad day, it could take 8, because that's a parking lot. Well, Kim and I were able to make it down from Cape Cod, Mass. to New York City in like 3.5 hours. We were down shooting 100 miles an hour all the way. We stopped once in a McDonald's on a rest stop, and it was like a horror movie. And you'll hear this theme again and again and again. It was like a movie. It was like a movie. And this was the first scene of this movie. We go into the McDonald's, and there was no one around. Everything was empty. It was still open, and whoever was left were like in the back looking at a black and white TV with rabbit ears. Out of every movie I've ever seen, every horror movie I've ever seen. And we kept on getting closer and closer to Manhattan, and the news kept on getting worse and worse and worse. I dropped my wife off at home, and I shot into the city. I work at Transit District 4, which is, we cover the transit subway station between Grand Street, Lower Manhattan, and 125th Street. And when I got to work, they told me that 2 of our officers were missing, Ramon Suarez and Mark Ellis. And I got to tell you something about Mark Ellis. Mark Ellis actually worked with me on midnights. I was the 1st platoon commander for many years. And Mark Ellis was the kind of a cop that was a really good cop, but a real pain in the butt. Let me give you an example on that. So we cover a large swath of Manhattan. And back in the day, we only had 2 cars. And on the midnight, you have to keep 1 car downtown and 1 car uptown, because if something were to happen uptown and everybody goes there, you have to split your resources. You need a car to stay downtown to cover it if something else happens. So we had a robbery, a group robbery up at 110th and Lex, and there was an injured perp. This guy was probably stabbed or bleeding, and we put a description out. So I'm shooting up there, and Mark had the lower sector. He was supposed to take care of the lower sector. Not Mark, I'm sorry, Ramon. So I get out of the car, I have the victim, and I see Ramon. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm thinking to myself, what the hell is he doing here? He's supposed to be down there. And then he goes around the corner, and he does this, and 5 minutes later, he puts over the radio that he's got 5 people stopped. And sure enough, he found the 5 kids that did the serious robbery, committed this serious assault. So just about to go and yell at him, I have to go, Ramon, free. Good job, guy. And then I had to keep my mouth shut. Because that's the kind of cop he was. He always had to be in the middle of things. And more often than not, when he was in the middle of things, he knew what he was doing and he would get things done. And on 9/11, Ramon Suarez and Mark Ellis were working a day tour. And they were assigned to the Delancey Street Essex station on Lower Manhattan. They were far away from the World Trade Center. But when those planes hit, he commandeered a cab and he made his way down here. And if you Google Ramon Suarez and 9/11 and look for images, you'll see he pulled out victim after victim after victim. And he did that until the North Tower collapsed first and killed him and his partner. And, you know, I was asked that night to go down and look for him and Mark. And when I got down there, there was this huge pile of rubble. And we knew where Mark was seen last, and there was just no way for me to get to him. They were doing a bucket brigade on the south side of the pile, but that was all the way over there, and he was over here. So when you, like what Gordon said, so this is looking at the west, so this is the North Tower, I believe. So we knew he was there, but they were digging over here. And this was, again, like a horror movie, because this was like 5 blocks square of a mound of rubble, maybe 15 stories high. And there was just no way to get to where we knew Mark was. So, you know, we stayed there, we looked, they got some people out in the days that followed, but eventually, as the pile became smaller and smaller, it kept on getting deeper, and the big pile became a really deep pit. And on December 19th of 2001, I got a call at work, and they had recovered Ramon's body. And so myself, with 5 other people, we went down to the site to escort his body out of the pit. And it was a surreal exercise, because I went down there, and I hadn't been down there in a while, and I'm looking like straight up, like this. If you go to the other museum, you'll be at the base. And the base of that, the bottom of the museum, the lowest point, that's where we recovered Ramon's body. And so we looked up, and it was just still, there were all these lights out, and they had Ramon in a Stokes basket. And each of us carried him out, and we were led up by Inspector, I don't know who he was then, Chief Esposito. And they played music, and everyone stopped what they were doing and saluted, and we escorted his body into the ambulance. And then we passed by the command at 14th Street Union Square, and then we took him to the morgue. And you know, his funeral was a couple of days later. And on Christmas Eve of that year, we recovered Mark's body, and his funeral was a few days later. So, I mean, that's the story I tell, and we're supposed to, when we do this, we're supposed to end on a high note. So how it impacted me is my wife, who worked right across the street from the World Trade Center, next to the Millennium Hotel at 1 Liberty Plaza. Well, she and I were living great lives. We were dinks, dual income, no kids. We were married a long time. And after this happened, you know, we decided, you know, let's have kids. Why not, right? It's felt more important. That seems weird, but my son Evan was born in 2003, my son Dylan in 2005, and my daughter Morgan in 2008. And so, you know, usually that's where I leave off the story, right? And that's a nice feel-good story. But today, we have to go further. We have to talk about how sometimes we choose our path in life, and sometimes life chooses our path. And, you know, I wouldn't have had those kids if 9/11, you know, never happened. I don't think so anyway. And all of the other things that followed. I probably would have retired after 20 years instead of staying 32 years. I worked in the same location, Union Square, until 2017. And I retired in June of 2017 to get involved in my children's education. And along the way, I became an education advocate because I was unhappy with things that they were doing to the New York City school systems. And if you're not from here, you don't have a clue what I'm talking about, and that's okay. Because the important thing is, I became an education advocate. I began to fight City Hall. I met super, super great parents who were aligned. I started an organization called Place New York City. I ran for the Community Education Council. And I wouldn't have done any of those things had we not had the kids, had 9/11 not happened. And because I'm frustrated in that we're not doing what we need to do in this city, I felt that my work as a police lieutenant, and my job was to ride the trains from 12 o'clock at night to 8 o'clock in the morning. And I was a quality of life lieutenant. So we would go and we would approach people who were doing minor violations, smoking, urinating, littering, going through train cars, hopping the fare, and we would challenge them, and we would run their names. And we would run their names not to pick on people, not to pick on any one group of people. We ran their names to see if they had a warrant, if they were on parole, if they had done robberies in the subway before, if they had other violent felonies on their record. And if they had, we would arrest them, because we felt that we were taking them out of the subway system before they can victimize somebody. And it worked, because we got crime down from super high levels in the 80s all the way down to, in 2015, 2010, to super, super low levels. And unfortunately, starting in 2015 or so, 2016, crime crept up and up and up until today. Crime is out of control, especially in the subway. The schools are failing in New York City. And because of that, and no one's around, this is not a political speech, because of that, I am running for New York State Senate right now. And I got to tell you, I'm upset right now because I wasn't aware that this place was in such danger of closing. And I got to tell you, the director was there talking to the news, and she was saying, well, if the governor steps in, maybe we could stay open. Well, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. I didn't hear that if the governor steps in, because I'm going to say, and she's so nice, she says, oh, we can't get political. Well, why the hell not? What are they going to do, close you down? Fuck yeah, we got to get political. I've spent the last 5 years fighting the system, and if I had known what would be happening right now, I would be political. I would have a news crew downstairs with the candidates who are running for office downstairs. I would be calling out Eric Adams right now. Why are we going to City Hall and asking Eric? I worked with you, dude. I worked with you, Eric. Why aren't you here committing to keep this place open? That's what we need to do right now. We need to make a commitment. The director was saying that we serve thousands of children. So all we need to do is take a little bit out of the Department of Education budget and commit to that to keep the revenue stream going until the international crowd comes back. The governor, they piss away so much money, guys. They piss it away. The more you get into this, the more the rabbit hole that you go into, you see what they're doing. And they can't spare a few $1 million. There are philanthropists out there can write a check and cover the rent for a year. Where the hell are they? Where the hell are they? This place is a resource that doesn't exist anyplace else because you want to speak to the survivors. Someday we won't be here. And that's why it's so important to videotape this. But until until we're all gone, until I'm like the Tuskegee Airman, 100 years old, and I'm coming down here within a wheelchair telling my story to whoever's here, and then I'm gone. But until then, we need to keep this open. And by then, maybe we need to have a holograph. I worked with some of these people in the moth presentation. I know them.